I was evicted, and a year later, I built a life no one could take away. They say the Dutch are good at keeping water out. Dikes, canals, engineering marvels. But no one tells you what to do when the water isn't outside, it's inside your chest, rising. I was 37 when I realized I might drown in my own life. The envelope was thin, white, no logo, just my name, Eva de Reader, typed neatly in the center like it didn't mean anything. I opened it in the stairwell of my apartment in Rotterdam, halfway between the mailboxes and the third floor, because something told me not to wait. Final notice. It was from the bank. Mortgage pass due by 3 months. I had until the end of the month to respond or they'd start proceedings. My knees didn't give out. My hands didn't shake. That would have made it feel cinematic. Instead, I just sighed, folded the letter, climbed the stairs, unlocked my front door, walked past the dead plants on the windowsill, put on the kettle. That's the thing about real life. You don't always fall apart when you should. Sometimes you just keep going. Until one day your whole world is underwater and you don't even remember how to swim. I stood in my kitchen, watching the kettle vibrate, thinking, this apartment is all I have left. I got it in the divorce, 5 years ago. Willem got the car, the dog, the friends. I got the silence. I thought I'd rebuild. I got certified to teach Dutch to expats, rented out the second room on Airbnb, did everything right until the bookings stopped during the pandemic and then the language school cut my hours. Now I was watching a red light on my electric meter blink slowly, counting every cup of tea, every bulb I didn't switch on, and then the water bill arrived. You learn strange things when you're broke. For instance, it's cheaper to buy day-old bread from the Turkish bakery than to keep your toaster plugged in. That boiling a single egg costs about 2 euro cents in electricity. That you can shower at the gym if you time it between the teenage boys leaving and the retirees arriving. You also learn silence. It settles in places it didn't used to belong, like your phone. My best friend Sana had called less and less since she got promoted and started dating some guy with a sleeve tattoo and a boat. My mum, who lives alone in Breda, called, but only to ask if I was okay. I said yes, every time, because it's easier than hearing the worry in her voice. I wasn't okay. But who was? There's a kind of shame that doesn't come with bruises or screaming matches. It's the kind that grows like mold in corners. Slow, quiet, rotting the things you used to be proud of. I started selling things. Books first. My beautiful collection of first editions, mostly Dutch authors. Then my winter coat. Then the antique blue Delft vase my Oma gave me. I listed it for 25 euros on Marktplaats. The guy who picked it up didn't even look me in the eye. Just handed over the money, left. I stood there holding the bill like it was blood money. That night I turned off the heating. February cold crept into the bones of the house and into mine. I wore 3 layers to bed. My breath hung in the air. Still, I didn't cry. I think when you're past a certain kind of desperation, the tears stop coming. Survival is mechanical. You don't collapse, you calculate. And then, just as I thought I might make it to the end of the month with one more tutoring session and fewer calories, the Airbnb guests messaged, "Sorry, something came up. Canceling last minute. Hope to rebook soon." That 140 euros was already mentally spent. On groceries, on my prepaid OV chip cart, on toothpaste. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I opened my laptop, hands shaking, and typed into Google, "Jobs you can do with a teaching degree but no energy." I started spending more time at the library, not because I was reading, but because it was warm and didn't cost anything. It's funny how the places you went as a child for wonder become places you return to for survival. I sat in the corner of the Central Library in Utrecht, coat draped over my legs like a blanket, laptop open to old lesson plans I hadn't touched in months. My stomach growled quietly. I hadn't eaten since a banana that morning. It was nearing 3 p.m. That's when I noticed her. Mid-40s, maybe. Blonde hair pulled back tight, tailored coat, an elegant scarf that looked French even if it wasn't. She was reading The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer, which I'd read years ago when I still believed asking for help was brave, not humiliating. We locked eyes. She smiled. I didn't. An hour passed. I was scrolling vacancies. Most required full-time availability, unpaid training days, or fluency in German for some reason. My battery hit 7%. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to be home. She stood and walked over. "Sorry to bother you," she said in perfect Dutch, "but are you a student?" "No," I said. "Not anymore." "Ah, you looked focused." "I run a language foundation just down the street. We teach Dutch to recent immigrants. Volunteering mostly, but there's a small stipend for instructors." I blinked. Words caught in my throat. She reached into her bag, pulled out a crisp flyer, and handed it to me like she was offering a parachute. Her name was Elsa. I don't know what made her stop at me. Maybe it was the hunger behind my eyes. Maybe she recognized something familiar, some weariness. Either way, I showed up the next Monday. The building was small, 3 rooms, mismatched chairs, faded posters about Dutch grammar on the walls, but it buzzed with life. Arabic, Tigrinya, Farsi, languages I didn't know, laughter I hadn't heard in months. Elsa walked me through everything. "Just teach them how to survive here," she said. "Fill out forms, talk to the gemeente, catch the right bus." It was like someone had poured color back into me. I wasn't teaching Shakespeare or irregular verbs. I was teaching how to call a doctor, how to explain a child's fever, how to ask for help without shame. One student, a Syrian man named Karim, cried when he finally pronounced his address correctly, not because of the Dutch, but because no one had asked him how he was in weeks, and somehow helping him remember who he was helped me remember who I was. That night, I bought bread and cheese. The library, the guests, the vase, they were still there, but so was this. Something new, something that hadn't been scraped together or bartered for. Maybe it wasn't a job, but it was a beginning. Winter in Utrecht is a strange kind of quiet. You start hearing yourself again. By late January, the holiday guests had left the upstairs apartment. The silence was worse than the noise. At least with guests, I could pretend I was invisible because they were loud. Now I was invisible because there was no one to see me. Elsa's foundation became my anchor. I volunteered 3 days a week, taught 2 classes, helped with intake forms, even fixed their ancient coffee machine by watching a YouTube tutorial in the pantry. She offered me a stipend. It wasn't much, 300 euros a month, but it meant I could eat and keep the heater on. One evening, as I was locking up, she caught me at the door. "I looked up your name," she said softly. "I didn't realize you had a full teaching credential." I nodded, embarrassed. "Past life. We're expanding, looking for someone to oversee curriculum. It's still a nonprofit, but it would be paid. Real salary, part-time, but formal." I stared at her. "I can send you the contract," she said, "but I want you to want it, not need it." That was the thing. I did want it. Not because it was stable, but because it mattered. I was good at it. And for the first time in a year, I felt like a teacher again. That night, I celebrated with a €1.50 chocolate bar and a long shower. It felt indulgent. It felt earned. The new contract started in February. With the money, I replaced the broken kettle, got proper groceries, replaced the burned-out light in the hallway that had been flickering like a bad omen since October, and I started smiling again, first by accident, then on purpose. I told my parents. They were relieved, said they were proud, but I could still hear the reluctance in their voices, like I had barely swerved out of disaster. They didn't ask if I was happy, only if I was okay. Being okay had become a moving target. Then, just as things steadied, the landlord returned. A letter slipped under the door. "Due to rising costs and tourism season approaching, we will be increasing the rent by €275 starting May 1st. Please confirm your continued tenancy by April 10th. I read it twice. 3 times. Then sat on the floor and let the panic bloom. It wasn't fair. I wasn't even using the whole apartment. They were. But on paper, it was 1 lease. 1 tenant, 1 target. I emailed, called, texted. They ignored all of it. I cried. I cursed. Then, I got dressed and walked to Elsa's office. "I need to find a new place," I told her. "Before May." She looked up from her desk. "You okay?" "No." She waited. "I was okay for a minute," I said. "But the ground just keeps moving under me. Every time I think I can breathe, something shifts." She reached for her tea. Took a sip. "Come with me." We walked 3 blocks to a pale yellow building with ivy crawling up its sides. She unlocked a door. Inside was a small apartment. Studio layout, wood floors, tiny kitchen, clean, warm, safe. "It's part of a community initiative," she said. "Low rent, meant for women starting over. I spoke to them about you. You'd be interviewed, but I think they'll say yes." I stood in the middle of the room and felt everything all at once. Gratitude, shame, fear, relief. "How much?" "Half of what you're paying now." My throat tightened. The interview was 2 days later. I wore my only blazer and answered every question like it was a confession. They asked about resilience, about contribution, about what I needed. I told them the truth. I don't want charity, I want a chance. A week later, I moved in. I packed everything I owned, 2 suitcases, a desk chair, 3 houseplants, and a box of books, and left the apartment with the silent guests and the broken doorbell behind. No one stopped me. No one even noticed. But I had noticed me, and that would have to be enough. The new apartment had a different kind of silence, not the silence of abandonment, the silence of a blank page. It was early March when I woke up to the heater not working. The air was cold enough to see my breath. My first instinct was to cry, old reflex, but instead I boiled water, poured it into a bowl, soaked a towel and wrapped it around my neck like a scarf, put on every layer I owned and sat at my tiny desk with my laptop, steam fogging the screen. I opened a new document titled, "Rebuilding, Not Restarting." A week before, one of my students, Miriam, 19, Syrian, stayed after class. "You always teach like we're going somewhere," she said. "Even when we're not." I laughed. "That's the point. You teach toward hope." She nodded. "My old teacher back home did that. Until he couldn't." She didn't say more. She didn't have to. That night, I wrote her a recommendation letter. She wanted to study early childhood education. Said she'd never believed it was possible until she sat in my class. Hope moves in whispers. At the foundation, I started organizing a women's storytelling night. Not formal, just tea, chairs in a circle, a space for voices to exist. We called it zichtbaar, Dutch for visible. The first night, only 5 women came, but each one told a story. Some in Dutch, some in English, one through a translator. We laughed, we cried, we lit candles. At the end, someone asked me to share. I almost said no. Then I remembered how long I'd spent being silent. I cleared my throat. "I used to think survival was about holding your breath," I said. "Now I think it's about learning to breathe differently." No one applauded. No one needed to. They understood. Spring crept into Utrecht like a secret. Tulips bloomed in crooked planters. Cafes reopened their terraces. You could smell hope in the air again, like fresh bread. The heater got fixed. The stipend became a contract, then a full-time offer. Elsa promoted me to program coordinator. I had a title, a badge, a mailbox with my name on it. I hung up the note Miriam wrote me next to it. You made me believe again, so now I will too. One night, I passed by my old apartment. It had a new nameplate, new curtains. I didn't stop, I didn't look up. The guests upstairs were gone, so was I. I visited my parents for the first time in a year. My mother hugged me too long. My father asked if I was safe, then if I was happy. I smiled. I'm both. We had tea, talked about nothing important, and it was everything. On the 1-year anniversary of the eviction, I bought a single sunflower and laid it outside the building. Not for nostalgia, for proof. I had survived something no one had witnessed but me, and I would never be invisible again.